The morning sun cast long shadows across the military training ground as Sarah Martinez adjusted her protective gear one more time. The Barrett M82, a 1.50 caliber rifle, lay before her on a shooting bench, its massive frame gleaming under the desert light. At 22 years old and barely 5 feet 4 inches tall, Sarah looked almost comical next to the weapon that weighed nearly 30 pounds and measured over 4 feet in length. "You sure about this, Martinez?" Staff Sergeant Thompson's voice carried across the range, thick with skepticism. "That Barrett's got a kick that'll knock you flat on your back. We've seen guys twice your size struggle with it." Sarah didn't respond immediately. Instead, she ran her fingers along the rifle's cold metal surface, feeling the precision engineering beneath her touch. Every ridge, every curve had been designed for one purpose: to deliver devastating accuracy at extreme distances. The other soldiers gathered behind the firing line whispered among themselves, some placing bets on how many shots it would take before she gave up. "I've been training with smaller calibers for months," Sarah finally replied, her voice steady despite the butterflies in her stomach. "I know what I'm getting into." The truth was, she had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone realized. Growing up on her family's ranch in West Texas, Sarah had learned to shoot before she could ride a bike. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had taught her that shooting wasn't about strength. It was about patience, breathing, and understanding your weapon. But the Barrett was different. It wasn't just a rifle. It was a legend. Sergeant First Class Rodriguez, the unit's senior marksmanship instructor, approached with a clipboard in hand. His weathered face showed years of experience training soldiers in the art of precision shooting. "Martinez, I gotta ask you one more time. Are you absolutely certain you want to attempt qualification on the Barrett? We can start you on something more manageable." Sarah shook her head firmly. "With respect, Sergeant, I didn't come this far to take the easy route. My scores with the M4 and M24 systems put me in the top 5% of this unit. I've earned the right to try." It was true. Since arriving at Fort Bragg 6 months ago, Sarah had consistently outperformed her peers in marksmanship training. Her precision with standard infantry weapons had caught the attention of the special operations community, leading to this opportunity to train with specialized equipment. But the Barrett represented something different, a weapon system that few soldiers ever mastered, let alone a woman of her small stature. The gathered crowd grew larger as word spread through the training area. Word had gotten out that the little girl from Texas was attempting to qualify on the big rifle. Some soldiers came to watch her fail, others out of genuine curiosity. Sarah could feel their eyes on her as she methodically checked the weapon systems. "First things first," Rodriguez said, kneeling beside her. "The Barrett fires the .50 BMG cartridge. That's a round originally designed to penetrate light armor and take down aircraft. The muzzle energy is over 13,000 foot-pounds. When you pull that trigger, everything changes." Sarah nodded, absorbing every word. She had studied the technical specifications obsessively, reading military manuals and civilian publications about the weapon system. The Barrett M82A1 was semi-automatic, fed by a 10-round detachable magazine, and capable of effective ranges beyond 2,000 meters. It was used by military snipers, explosive ordnance disposal teams, and special operations units worldwide. "The recoil impulse isn't like anything you've experienced," Rodriguez continued. "It's not just about holding on tight. You need to work with a rifle, let it cycle naturally. Fight it, and it'll fight back." Sarah adjusted her position behind the weapon, settling into a modified prone position that would help manage the massive recoil. Her body formed a stable platform, left elbow planted firmly on the ground, right hand gripping the pistol grip with controlled pressure. She had practiced this position hundreds of times with smaller rifles, but the Barrett's size changed everything. "Breathing is critical," she whispered to herself, repeating her father's old lessons. "Let the shot surprise you." The first target stood at 300 meters, relatively close for the Barrett, but a reasonable starting point. A standard military silhouette target, black against white, waited motionless in the still morning air. 300 meters was well within the rifle's capabilities, but Sarah knew this first shot would set the tone for everything that followed. Thompson's voice boomed across the range. "Shooter, make ready." Sarah inserted a loaded magazine into the weapon with a solid click. The Barrett's action was robust and mechanical, designed to function in the harshest conditions imaginable. She pulled the charging handle back and released it, chambering the first round. The sound of the massive bolt closing echoed across the range with finality. "Shooter ready," she called back, settling into her final firing position. The telescope scope mounted on the rifle was a work of art in itself, offering crystal-clear magnification and precise reticle adjustment. Sarah peered through the glass, bringing the distant target into sharp focus. The crosshairs settled on the target's center mass, wavering slightly with her heartbeat. Around her, the desert training ground fell silent, except for the whisper of wind across the range. Even the skeptics held their breath, waiting to see what would happen when the small woman behind the big rifle pulled the trigger. Sarah controlled her breathing, taking in a deep breath and exhaling slowly. Her finger found the trigger, a crisp two-stage design that required deliberate pressure. The rifle weighed heavy against her shoulder, its bipod legs planted firmly in the sandy soil. "Steady," she whispered to herself. "Just like Dad taught you." The memories flooded back, countless hours on the ranch, learning to read wind and distance, understanding how bullets behaved in flight. Her father had never treated her differently because she was a girl. If anything, he had been more demanding, knowing she would face doubters throughout her life. "A good shot is a good shot," he used to say. "Doesn't matter who's behind the trigger if the fundamentals are solid." Sarah's world narrowed to the space between the crosshairs and the target. Her trigger finger applied steady pressure, feeling for the rifle's breakpoint. The Barrett was known for its surprisingly good trigger, considering its robust military design. The moment came without warning. The trigger broke cleanly, and the Barrett erupted. The sound was unlike anything the spectators had heard from small arms. It wasn't the sharp crack of a standard rifle, but a deep, thunderous boom that rolled across the desert like artillery fire. A massive muzzle blast sent sand and debris flying in all directions, creating a momentary dust cloud around Sarah's position. The recoil hit her like a freight train. Despite her preparation, the energy transfer was overwhelming. The rifle bucked violently against her shoulder, driving her body backward across the ground. For a moment, she lost sight of everything except the immediate need to recover and regain control. When the dust settled and her vision cleared, Sarah found herself several inches behind her original position, the Barrett still clutched in her hands. Her shoulder throbbed from the impact, and her ears rang despite the protection. But she was still in the fight. "Target," Rodriguez called out, peering through his spotting scope. There was surprise in his voice. "Hit center mass." A cheer went up from some of the spectators, while others shook their heads in disbelief. Sarah had not only survived her first shot with the Barrett, but had placed it exactly where she intended. The .50 caliber round had punched a clean hole through the target center, leaving no doubt about her accuracy. Thompson jogged over to her position, his earlier skepticism replaced by grudging respect. "Not bad, Martinez. But that was just one shot at close range. Think you can do it again?" Sarah worked the Barrett's action, ejecting the spent cartridge case and chambering a fresh round. The empty brass case was enormous, nearly 6 inches long and thick as her thumb. She rolled her shoulder, working out the soreness from the impact. "Load me up for the 500-meter targets," she said simply. The second string of fire presented new challenges. 500 meters meant dealing with wind drift, bullet drop, and the psychological pressure of a longer shot. The .50 caliber round was less affected by wind than smaller bullets, but at distance, every environmental factor mattered. Sarah made mental calculations as she settled behind the rifle again. The wind was light, but variable, maybe 3 to 5 miles per hour from her left. The bullet would drop approximately 8 inches from her point of aim at this distance. She adjusted her scope accordingly and took her position. This time, she was ready for the recoil. Her body was set more firmly, her grip adjusted based on what she had learned from the first shot. The Barrett felt more familiar now, less like an alien weapon, and more like a tool she could control. The second shot came as a surprise to her trigger finger, just as it should. The massive rifle boomed again, sending another shockwave across the range. This time, Sarah rode the recoil better, maintaining her position and quickly reacquiring the target through her scope. "Hit 9 ring," Rodriguez called out. "Excellent shot." The third and fourth targets pushed out to 700 and 800 meters respectively. Each shot required careful calculation and precise execution. Sarah found herself settling into a rhythm with the Barrett, understanding how the weapon wanted to be fired. The key was not to fight the rifle's massive energy, but to channel it properly. By the time she reached the 1,000-meter target, word had spread throughout the base. Officers began appearing at the range, drawn by reports of the female soldier making impressive shots with the Barrett. Sarah could feel the pressure building, but she forced herself to focus on the fundamentals her father had drilled into her years earlier. The 1,000-meter shot represented the outer edge of what most soldiers could achieve with the Barrett under field conditions. It required not only marksmanship skill, but also an intimate understanding of ballistics and environmental factors. At this distance, the bullet would take over 2 seconds to reach the target, during which time even a slight wind change could affect the outcome. Sarah studied the target through her scope, noting the mirage patterns that indicated wind speed and direction at various points along the bullet's path. The .50 caliber projectile would drop nearly 15 feet from her point of aim, requiring significant elevation adjustment. "Take your time, Martinez," Rodriguez said quietly. "This is the shot that separates the marksman from the snipers." Sarah nodded, making fine adjustments to her scope settings. The mathematics of long-range shooting fascinated her, the precise calculations needed to put a bullet exactly where intended despite the influence of gravity, wind, temperature, and humidity. It was both art and science requiring technical knowledge and intuitive feel. The wind picked up slightly, and Sarah waited for it to settle. Patience was perhaps the most important virtue for a precision shooter. Rushing a shot at long range was a guarantee of failure. She controlled her breathing and let her natural point of aim settle on the target. When conditions were right, she pressed the trigger with the same deliberate pressure she had used on all the previous shots. The Barrett responded with its characteristic boom, and Sarah watched through her scope as the bullet traced its long arc toward the distant target. 2.5 seconds later, the impact was visible even without magnification. "Target. Center hit." Rodriguez's voice carried clear amazement. "Outstanding shooting, Martinez." This time, the cheers from the spectators were genuine and enthusiastic. Sarah had just accomplished something that many male soldiers twice her size had failed to achieve. She had not only handled the Barrett's punishing recoil, but had used it to deliver precision fire at extreme range. As Sarah safed the weapon and began to clean up her firing position, she noticed a change in how the other soldiers looked at her. The skeptical glances had been replaced by expressions of respect and admiration. She had proven something important not just to them, but to herself. Colonel Williams, the base commander, had arrived in time to witness the final shots. He approached Sarah's position with obvious interest, having heard the reports from his subordinates about the unusual demonstration taking place on the range. "Soldier," he said formally, "that was some impressive shooting. Where did you learn to handle a rifle like that?" Sarah stood and rendered a proper salute before responding. "Thank you, sir. I learned the basics from my father on our family ranch. But I've been working with Sergeant Rodriguez to understand the technical aspects of long-range shooting." Williams nodded thoughtfully. "Well, you've certainly mastered more than the basics. I understand you've been requesting assignment to the Marksmanship Training Unit." "Yes, sir. I believe I can contribute to improving our soldiers' shooting capabilities." The colonel glanced at the targets, then back at Sarah. "Based on what I've seen today, I think you're right. I'll have my adjutant process the paperwork for your transfer. But first, I want you to demonstrate your capabilities with the Barrett under more challenging conditions. Can you handle night shooting?" Sarah felt her pulse quicken with excitement. Night shooting with the Barrett would require thermal optics and an even deeper understanding of the weapon system. It was the kind of challenge she had been hoping for. "I'd welcome the opportunity, sir." William smiled for the first time since arriving at the range. "Outstanding. Report to Sergeant Rodriguez tomorrow at 0500. You'll begin advanced training immediately." As the crowd began to disperse, Sarah remained at the firing position, methodically cleaning the Barrett and packing away her equipment. The rifle would need thorough maintenance after the extended firing session, and she wanted to understand every aspect of caring for the weapon. Rodriguez approached as she finished breaking down the rifle. "Hell of a show, Martinez. I've been training shooters for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone adapt to the Barrett that quickly. You got a natural feel for it." "Thank you, Sergeant. The rifle is incredible once you understand how it works. It's not about overpowering it. It's about working with it." "Exactly right. Most people try to muscle through the recoil instead of managing it. You figured that out faster than soldiers with years of experience." Rodriguez paused, looking thoughtful. "Colonel Williams wasn't kidding about the night training. We're going to push you hard over the next few weeks. Think you're ready for that?" Sarah looked back at the distant targets, thinking about the precision required to place bullets exactly where intended despite all the variables working against her. The challenge excited her more than it intimidated her. "I'm ready, Sergeant. I want to learn everything this weapon can teach me." As they walked back toward the main training building, Sarah reflected on how dramatically her day had changed. She had arrived at the range as just another soldier trying to prove herself. She was leaving as someone who had demonstrated exceptional capability with one of the military's most challenging weapon systems. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had become more than just a tool in her hands. It was a gateway to opportunities she had only dreamed about. But more importantly, it was proof that her father had been right all those years ago on the ranch. Skill and determination mattered more than size or gender when it came to precision shooting. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and advanced training. Sarah looked forward to every moment of it, knowing that she had found her calling in the art of long-range marksmanship. The soldiers who had doubted her this morning now understood that she was something special behind a rifle. But this was only the beginning. The real test would come when she had to prove herself under field conditions, where the target shot back and missing meant more than just a poor score on a training evaluation. Sarah Martinez was ready for whatever came next, armed with the confidence that came from knowing she could master any weapon system she set her mind to. The Barrett had accepted her as its operator. Now it was time to see how far that partnership could take them both. 6 weeks after her initial Barrett qualification, Sarah Martinez found herself lying in a muddy field at 0300 hours, rain pelting her ghillie suit as she peered through the thermal scope mounted on her rifle. The target building sat 800 meters away, its heat signature clearly visible through the night vision optics despite the terrible weather conditions. "Tango 1 is in position," she whispered in her throat microphone, her voice barely audible even to herself. "I have eyes on the objective." The advanced training program had been everything Sergeant Rodriguez promised, and more. 18-hour days of intensive instruction covering ballistics, weather reading, camouflage and concealment, field craft, and psychological preparation. Sarah had absorbed every lesson with the dedication of someone who knew her life might depend on the knowledge. But tonight wasn't training. This was her first operational deployment with the Barrett, supporting a hostage rescue mission in a war-torn region where American diplomats had been taken captive by heavily armed militants. The mission had been classified as extremely high risk, requiring precision fire support to neutralize specific threats without endangering the hostages. "Copy, Sniper 1, came the response from Captain Morrison, the team leader. "We're beginning our approach now. Maintain overwatch and report any movement in the target building." Sarah adjusted her position slightly, feeling the cold mud seep through her clothing. The ghillie suit, carefully constructed with local vegetation, made her virtually invisible in the darkness. Hours of patient construction had gone into creating the perfect camouflage for this specific environment. The Barrett lay steady on its bipod, the muzzle crowned with a suppressor that would reduce both the sound and flash signature of any shots. The weapon itself had been modified specifically for this mission. A high-end thermal scope replaced the standard optics, allowing her to see heat signatures through walls and in complete darkness. The ammunition was match-grade .50 caliber rounds designed for maximum accuracy and penetration. Each cartridge cost more than most soldiers made in a day, but precision was worth any expense when lives hung in the balance. Through her scope, Sarah could see the building's layout clearly. The thermal imaging revealed the positions of guards inside, their body heat showing as bright white figures against the cooler background. She counted 5 hostiles on the upper floor, 3 on the ground level, and at least 2 more in what appeared to be a basement area. "Control, I'm seeing 8 confirmed hostiles," she reported. 3 appear to be guarding what looks like a group of cooler signatures in the northwest corner of the building, likely the hostages. "Understood, Sniper 1. We need you to eliminate the rooftop sentry first. He's got line of sight on our approach route." Sarah shifted her aim to the building's roof, where a lone figure stood watch with an assault rifle. The man was clearly visible through the thermal scope, his body heat creating a perfect target signature against the cool night air. The range was exactly 847 meters according to her laser rangefinder, well within the Barrett's effective range, but requiring careful calculation for the environmental conditions. The wind had picked up since her initial setup, now gusting at 12 to 15 miles per hour from the southwest. Rain was falling steadily, which would affect both the bullet's flight path and her ability to maintain a stable shooting position. Sarah made mental calculations, adjusting her aim point to compensate for the wind drift and weather conditions. Her breathing became controlled and deliberate. In training, she had learned to time her shots between heartbeats, using her body's natural rhythm to achieve maximum stability. The Barrett felt familiar in her hands now, its weight and balance as comfortable as an old friend. "Sniper 1, take the shot when ready." Morrison's voice crackled through her earpiece. Sarah's finger found the trigger, applying the steady pressure she had practiced thousands of times. The moment came suddenly, but without surprise. The Barrett's trigger broke cleanly, and the massive rifle erupted in a controlled explosion of sound and energy. Despite the suppressor, the .50 caliber round's departure created a significant noise signature. The muzzle flash was reduced, but not eliminated, and Sarah immediately began to reposition after the shot, knowing that any alert enemies might have detected her firing position. Through her scope, she watched the bullet's effect on target. The heavy projectile struck the sentry center mass, removing the threat instantly. The man collapsed without making a sound, his weapon clattering to the rooftop. "Target down," she reported. "Rooftop is clear for your approach." "Outstanding shot, Sniper 1. Moving to Phase 2. The rescue team began their assault on the building, moving through the shadows with practiced precision. Sarah maintained overwatch, scanning for additional threats that might emerge from the surrounding area. The thermal scope revealed several vehicles approaching from the east, reinforcements that could complicate the rescue operation significantly. "Control, I've got 3 vehicles inbound from your 6 o'clock, she reported urgently. Multiple heat signatures in each vehicle. Looks like a convoy of reinforcements. How long until they reach the building?" Sarah studied the approaching vehicles, estimating their speed and route. 2 minutes, maybe less. They're moving fast on the main road. The situation was escalating rapidly. The rescue team was already inside the building, engaged with the hostiles guarding the hostages. Adding a dozen or more armed reinforcements to the equation could turn a surgical operation into a prolonged firefight that would endanger everyone involved. "Sniper 1, can you delay those vehicles?" Sarah considered her options. The Barrett was devastating against personnel, but vehicles presented a different challenge. However, the .50 caliber round was originally designed for anti-material work, capable of disabling light vehicles and equipment. If she could target the engines or drivers of the approaching trucks, she might buy the rescue team the time they needed. "Affirmative. I can engage the lead vehicle." The convoy was still over a kilometer away, approaching on a dirt road that would bring them directly to the target building. Sarah adjusted her scope for the longer range, calculating the increased bullet drop and wind drift required for the extended shot. The lead vehicle was an older pickup truck, heavily loaded with armed men in the cargo bed. If she could disable it in the narrow section of road they were approaching, the other vehicles would be blocked behind it, buying precious time for the rescue operation. Sarah aimed for the truck's engine compartment, knowing that a .50 caliber round through the engine block would stop the vehicle immediately. The range was 1,247 meters according to her rangefinder, a challenging shot, but well within her capabilities with the Barrett. The wind had shifted slightly, now coming more directly from the west. Rain continued to fall, adding another variable to her calculations. Sarah waited for the truck to reach a straight section of road where its movement would be predictable, then took up the trigger slack. The Barrett's second shot of the night was just as impressive as the first. The muzzle blast illuminated the surrounding area briefly, and the heavy projectile began its long flight toward the approaching vehicle. At over a kilometer distance, there was a noticeable delay between the shot and impact. Sarah watched through her scope as the massive bullet struck the truck's hood with devastating effect. Steam and smoke immediately began pouring from the damaged engine, and the vehicle slewed to a stop, completely blocking the narrow road. "Vehicle disabled," she reported. "Convoy is stopped, but they're dismounting and proceeding on foot." The reinforcements were now moving through the darkness toward the building, but they had lost the advantage of mobility and surprise. The rescue team would have several more minutes to complete their mission before facing additional opposition. Inside the building, Sarah could see the progress of the assault through her thermal scope. The rescue team had neutralized most of the guards and was moving toward the room where the hostages were being held. 2 remaining hostiles had barricaded themselves in a room adjacent to the hostages, creating a dangerous standoff situation. "Sniper 1, we need you to take out 2 tangos in the southeast corner room. They're using the hostages as shields, and we can't get a clear shot from inside." This was the most challenging shot of the night. The targets were inside the building, partially concealed by walls and furniture, with innocent civilians in close proximity. Sarah would need to identify her targets precisely and ensure that her shots would not endanger the hostages. The thermal scope revealed the situation clearly. 2 armed figures crouched behind makeshift cover in a room where several cooler signatures. The hostages huddled against the far wall. The .50 caliber round would easily penetrate the building's walls, but Sarah needed to calculate the exact trajectory to ensure the bullets would hit only their intended targets. She studied the building's construction through her scope, noting the materials and thickness of the walls. The Barrett's ammunition would punch through the exterior wall with minimal deflection, but she needed to account for any change in the bullet's path after penetration. "I can see both targets," she reported. "They're approximately 15 feet inside the building, behind light cover. I have a clear shot angle that won't endanger the hostages. You're clear hot on both targets." Sarah adjusted her aim point to account for the wall penetration, calculating the slight drop in velocity and potential deflection the bullet would experience. The first target was crouched behind an overturned table, his heat signature clearly visible through the thermal optics. The third shot of the night was fired with the same precision as the first 2. The .50 caliber round punched through the building's wall as if it were paper, striking the first hostile before he could react to the rescue team's assault. Sarah quickly worked the Barrett's action, chambering another round and shifting her aim to the second target. The man had moved slightly after hearing the first shot, but he remained clearly visible through the thermal scope. Her fourth shot followed seconds after the third, eliminating the final threat to the hostages and clearing the way for the rescue team to complete their mission. "Both targets down," she reported. "Room is secure for hostage extraction." "Outstanding work, Sniper 1. All hostages are safe and accounted for. We're beginning extraction now." The rescue operation had been completed in under 20 minutes, thanks largely to Sarah's precision fire support. The Barrett had performed flawlessly under challenging conditions, delivering devastating accuracy at multiple ranges and target types. But the mission wasn't over yet. The disabled convoy had regrouped and was approaching the building on foot, forcing the rescue team to fight their way out under enemy fire. Sarah maintained overwatch, engaging targets of opportunity as they presented themselves. The advancing reinforcements had no idea where the sniper fire was coming from. To them, their comrades were simply dropping without warning, struck by an invisible enemy that could reach out and touch them from impossible distances. The psychological effect was as devastating as the physical damage. Sarah methodically engaged the most dangerous targets, leaders trying to organize the attack, heavy weapons operators, and anyone threatening the rescue team's extraction route. Each shot was carefully planned and precisely executed, making maximum use of the Barrett's devastating capabilities. By the time the rescue helicopters arrived to extract the team and hostages, Sarah had fired 18 rounds and eliminated 12 threats. The Barrett had performed perfectly throughout the extended engagement, proving itself as both a precision instrument and a psychological weapon. As dawn broke over the battlefield, Sarah carefully packed her equipment and prepared to move to the extraction point. The ghillie suit that had kept her hidden throughout the night was now soaked with mud and rain, but it had served its purpose perfectly. The Barrett was carefully disassembled and packed in its transit case, ready for the journey home. Every component was inspected and cleaned, ensuring the weapon would be ready for the next mission. Sarah had developed an almost reverent relationship with the rifle, understanding that their partnership was built on mutual respect and trust. Captain Morrison met her at the extraction point, his face showing the exhaustion of a successful but challenging operation. Hell of a job tonight, Martinez. That was some of the finest sniper support I've ever seen. Thank you, sir. The Barrett made it possible. That rifle can do things that seem impossible until you see them happen. Well, you've certainly proven what a skilled operator can do with the right equipment. I'm recommending you for advanced sniper school. Think you're interested? Sarah looked back toward the building where the hostages had been held, thinking about the precision and patience required to use the Barrett effectively under combat conditions. The training had been intensive, but real combat had taught her lessons that could never be learned on a range. Yes, sir. I want to learn everything I can about long-range precision shooting. Morrison nodded approvingly. Good. You've got natural talent, but there's always more to learn. Advanced school will teach you things about field craft and tactics that will make you even more effective. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying the rescued hostages to safety, Sarah reflected on how much her life had changed since that first day on the range. The Barrett had become more than just a weapon in her hands. It was a tool that allowed her to protect innocent people and support her teammates in ways that few soldiers could match. The doubters who had questioned whether she could handle the big rifle seemed like a distant memory now. Tonight, she had proven beyond any doubt that skill and training mattered more than size or gender when it came to precision marksmanship. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had found its perfect operator, and together they were capable of remarkable things. But this mission was just the beginning. Advanced Sniper School would push her skills even further, teaching her to operate independently behind enemy lines and engage targets at ranges that most people couldn't even imagine. Sarah looked forward to every challenge that lay ahead, knowing that the Barrett would be her constant companion in the pursuit of marksmanship excellence. The weapon that they said she couldn't manage had become her greatest strength. Together, they would continue to prove that dedication and skill could overcome any obstacle, no matter what the doubters might say. The helicopter touched down at the United States Army Sniper School at Fort Benning, Georgia, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky orange and pink. Sarah Martinez stepped off the aircraft with her gear bag slung over her shoulder, the Barrett rifle case in her other hand. The humid Georgia air was thick with moisture and the promise of another scorching day. 12 weeks had passed since her successful hostage rescue mission, and Sarah had spent every moment of that time preparing for what lay ahead. Advanced Sniper School was considered one of the most challenging courses in the military, with a failure rate exceeding 60%. Only the most skilled marksmen were even invited to attend, and fewer still graduated with the coveted sniper qualification. Master Sergeant David Chun stood waiting on the landing zone, his weathered face showing no emotion as he watched the newest student arrive. Chun was a legend in the sniper community, credited with over 200 confirmed kills during multiple deployments, and recognized as one of the finest instructors in the military. Martinez, Chun said simply, extending his hand. I've heard about your work with the Barrett. Impressive shooting, for what I understand. Sarah shook his hand firmly. Thank you, Master Sergeant. I'm ready to learn everything you can teach me. Chun studied her for a moment, taking in her small stature and youthful appearance. Sarah could see the same skeptical look she had grown accustomed to over the years, but there was something different in Chen's expression, a professional assessment rather than dismissive doubt. We'll see about that, he replied. This course isn't about what you've done before. It's about what you can do when everything is working against you. Follow me. The sniper school facility was unlike any training environment Sarah had experienced. Multiple ranges extended out to distances exceeding 2 kilometers, with targets hidden in realistic terrain that mimicked combat conditions around the world. Buildings, vehicles, and mannequins were positioned throughout the complex, creating scenarios that required both marksmanship skill and tactical thinking. "Your reputation precedes you, Martinez," Chun explained as they walked toward the main instruction building. "That hostage rescue mission has been written up as a textbook example of precision fire support. But this course will test more than your shooting ability. We're going to evaluate your field craft, your ability to operate independently, and your mental toughness under extreme pressure." They entered a classroom where 11 other students were already seated, all male, all looking like seasoned combat veterans. Sarah recognized the type immediately: experienced soldiers who had proven themselves in combat and were seeking to add sniper qualification to their skills. Several glanced at her with curiosity, clearly wondering what a woman of her size was doing in their midst. "Class, this is Martinez," Chun announced. "She'll be joining us for the next 8 weeks. Some of you may have heard about her work with the Barrett system. She's here because she's earned it, just like the rest of you." The curriculum was immediately overwhelming. Morning instruction covered advanced ballistics, including the effects of altitude, humidity, and temperature on bullet flight. Afternoon sessions focused on camouflage and concealment, teaching students to become invisible in any environment. Evening classes addressed target identification, range estimation, and the psychological aspects of precision shooting. But the real learning happened on the range, where Sarah found herself challenged in ways she had never experienced. The targets were smaller, the distances greater, and the conditions deliberately difficult. Wind flags were removed, forcing students to read environmental conditions through natural indicators. Time limits were imposed, requiring quick decisions and rapid engagement of multiple targets. "The Barrett is an outstanding weapon system," Chun told Sarah during their first one-on-one coaching session. "But it's not the only tool in a sniper's kit. Today, you're going to learn to achieve the same precision with a standard bolt-action rifle." The M24 sniper weapon system was lighter and more portable than the Barrett, but it fired a much smaller .308 Winchester cartridge. Sarah found herself relearning fundamental skills, adapting her technique to a weapon that demanded different approaches to long-range shooting. At 800 meters, the difference between the two rifles was dramatic. Where the Barrett's massive .50 caliber projectile punched through wind and weather with brute force, the smaller .308 round required delicate touch and precise calculation. Sarah spent hours learning to read mirage patterns, judge wind speed by watching grass and leaves, and estimate range without the aid of electronic devices. "Forget everything you think you know," Chin instructed during a particularly challenging exercise. "The fundamentals are the same, but every rifle has its own personality. You need to learn this weapon's capabilities and limitations just like you learn the Barrett's." Week after week, the challenges intensified. Students were required to make precision shots while carrying heavy packs, after completing exhausting physical challenges and under simulated combat stress. Mock scenarios placed snipers in urban environments, dense forests, and open desert terrain, each demanding different skills and adaptations. Sarah found herself struggling with some aspects of the training while excelling at others. Her marksmanship remained exceptional, but the physical demands of long-range reconnaissance were brutal. Carrying a complete sniper system for miles through rough terrain tested her endurance in ways that range shooting never had. "Size isn't everything in this business," Chin told her after a particularly grueling field exercise. "But it is something. You need to find ways to compensate for your physical limitations through superior fieldcraft and planning." The breakthrough came during the 5th week of training, when students were required to engage targets at the maximum range of their assigned weapon systems. Sarah had drawn the M24 rifle, which was effective to approximately 1,000 meters under ideal conditions. The day's challenge was to engage a series of targets at ranges from 800 to 1,200 meters, pushing the rifle beyond its normal capabilities. Weather conditions were perfect: no wind, clear skies, and moderate temperature. Sarah studied each target through her scope, calculating the extreme bullet drop and wind drift required for such long shots. The mathematics were complex, requiring precise adjustments and perfect execution. Her first shot at 800 meters was dead center, demonstrating the accuracy she had maintained throughout the course. The 900-meter target required more calculation, accounting for the increased bullet drop and the rifle's reduced energy at extended range. Again, her shot was precise and devastating. At 1,000 meters, Sarah was pushing the M24 to its absolute limits. The target appeared tiny through her scope, and the bullet would drop over 20 feet from her point of aim. She made careful adjustments to her scope settings and settled into her shooting position with the patience she had learned from years of practice. The shot surprised even Chun, who was observing through his spotting scope. The bullet struck the target dead center, demonstrating a level of precision that few students achieved even with more powerful rifles. Outstanding shooting, he acknowledged. Now try the 1,100-meter target. This shot was beyond the rifle's effective range, requiring Sarah to compensate for factors that most shooters never had to consider. She studied the target through her scope, making calculations that pushed her mathematical skills to their limits. The bullet would drop over 30 feet and take nearly 2 seconds to reach the target. Her shot was slightly low and left, missing the target by inches. But the fact that she had come close to hitting a target beyond her weapon's capabilities impressed everyone present. Load another round, Chun instructed. Make your adjustments and try again. Sarah analyzed her first shot, calculating the corrections needed for the follow-up. She adjusted her scope for additional elevation and windage, then settled back into position with renewed focus. Her second shot at 1,100 meters found its mark, striking the target near the edge, but scoring a definitive hit. A cheer went up from her classmates, who understood the difficulty of what they had just witnessed. That, Chun announced, is what we call pushing the envelope. Martinez just made a shot that textbooks say is impossible with that rifle. The success at extreme range opened new possibilities for advanced training. Chun began working with Sarah on specialized techniques for engaging targets beyond normal effective ranges, teaching her to exploit environmental conditions and make precise calculations that other students couldn't match. You have a gift for reading conditions and making adjustments, he explained during an evening instruction session. That's not something that can be taught. It's an intuitive understanding of how bullets behave in flight. Combined with your mathematical skills, it makes you capable of shots that most snipers wouldn't attempt. The culmination of the course came during the final field exercise, a week-long simulation that placed students in realistic combat scenarios. Sarah was assigned to work independently, conducting reconnaissance and precision fire missions in a mountainous region that tested every skill she had learned. Her mission was to observe and report on enemy activity while providing fire support for a simulated special operations team. The challenge required her to remain undetected for 5 days while engaging targets of opportunity at various ranges and conditions. Sarah established her primary hide site in a rocky outcropping that provided excellent observation of the target area while offering multiple escape routes. She had carried the Barrett system for this exercise, knowing that its long-range capabilities would be essential for the mission profile. For 3 days, she observed and reported enemy movements, building a detailed picture of their patrol patterns and defensive positions. Her hide site remained undetected despite searchers passing within 50 meters of her position. The ghillie suit and camouflage techniques she had mastered made her virtually invisible in the rocky terrain. On the 4th day, the exercise escalated when the simulated enemy force captured members of the Special Operations Team. Sarah was tasked with providing precision fire support for a rescue operation, engaging specific targets while avoiding civilian casualties in a complex scenario. The targets were positioned at ranges from 600 to 1,500 meters, requiring her to engage multiple threats in sequence while remaining undetected. Sarah systematically eliminated each target with the Barrett, demonstrating the skills she had developed over months of intensive training. Her final shot of the exercise was the most challenging yet. A high-value target had been identified at extreme range, nearly 1,600 meters, partially concealed in a building that limited her shot angles. The target would be visible for only seconds at a time, requiring her to be ready to engage instantly when the opportunity presented itself. Sarah spent hours studying the target area, calculating wind conditions and bullet trajectory for the extreme shot. When the moment came, she was ready. Her shot crossed nearly a mile of open terrain to strike the target precisely, completing the mission with a demonstration of marksmanship that few students in the school's history had matched. Master Sergeant Chun was waiting when she returned from the field exercise, his expression showing a mixture of pride and amazement. Martinez, in 20 years of instruction, I've never seen a student adapt to different weapon systems and extreme ranges the way you have. Your final shot was measured at 1,587 meters, a new school record for precision at that distance. The graduation ceremony was held on the main parade ground, with Sarah standing among the 8 students who had successfully completed the demanding course. 4 others had been eliminated during various phases of training, unable to meet the rigorous standards required for sniper qualification. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the school commandant, addressed the graduates with words that would stay with Sarah for the rest of her career. You are now qualified as military snipers, but your education has only begun. The skills you've learned here are tools. How you use them will determine your effectiveness in combat. As Sarah received her sniper badge and qualification certificate, she thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From that first day on the range with the Barrett to setting a new school record for precision shooting, she had proven that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle. Chin approached her after the ceremony, carrying a small wooden box. This is for you, Sergeant Martinez. It's a custom scope mount for your Barrett, designed to maintain zero regardless of environmental conditions. Consider it a graduation gift from someone who recognizes exceptional talent. Sarah opened the box to reveal a beautifully crafted piece of precision equipment, clearly worth more than most soldiers made in several months. Master Sergeant, I can't accept something this expensive. You already have, Chin replied with a rare smile. That scope mount is going to help you make shots that other snipers can only dream about. Use it well. As she prepared to leave Fort Benning for her next assignment, Sarah reflected on how much she had learned during the intensive course. The Barrett remained her weapon of choice, but she now understood that true marksmanship transcended any single rifle or cartridge. It was about understanding the science of ballistics, reading environmental conditions, and maintaining the mental discipline required for precision shooting under any circumstances. Her next assignment would take her to a forward operating base in a combat zone, where she would serve as a sniper team leader responsible for training other soldiers in long-range marksmanship. It was an opportunity to share the knowledge she had gained while continuing to develop her own skills in real-world conditions. The woman who had been doubted for her size and gender was now recognized as one of the finest precision shooters in the military. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had been the key that unlocked her potential, but her success came from the dedication and skill she brought to every challenge. As her transport aircraft lifted off from Fort Benning, Sarah knew that her reputation was just beginning to grow. The record-breaking shot at sniper school will be talked about for years, but it was only the beginning of what she hoped to accomplish with the Barrett system in her hands. The forward operating base sat in a valley surrounded by mountains that stretched toward the horizon like giant stone teeth. Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of the command center, studying the terrain through powerful binoculars as the sun set behind the peaks. 18 months had passed since her graduation from sniper school, and she had become the most requested precision shooter in the theater of operations. Martinez, we've got a situation developing, called Major Sandra Williams as she climbed the stairs to the observation deck. Williams commanded the Special Operations Unit that Sarah had been assigned to support, and her urgent tone suggested something significant was happening. Sarah lowered her binoculars and turned to face her commanding officer. What's the situation, ma'am? Intelligence has located a high-value target in the mountains about 40 kilometers north of here. He's been coordinating attacks against our supply convoys and is directly responsible for the deaths of 12 American soldiers over the past month. Williams handed Sarah a tablet displaying satellite imagery of a remote mountain compound. The target location was perched on a rocky ridge at an elevation of nearly 8,000 feet, surrounded by natural defenses that made conventional assault nearly impossible. The target will be visible for approximately 90 seconds during a scheduled meeting tomorrow afternoon, Williams continued. Our best intelligence puts the distance at just over 2 kilometers from the nearest feasible shooting position. It's going to require a shot that pushes every boundary of what's possible with current equipment. Sarah studied the imagery carefully, noting the extreme range and difficult terrain. 2 kilometers was at the very edge of even the Barrett's effective range, requiring perfect conditions and flawless execution. The altitude would affect both bullet trajectory and her own physical performance, adding another layer of complexity to an already challenging shot. "What's the weather forecast for tomorrow?" she asked, already beginning her mental calculations. "Variable winds, possible afternoon thunderstorms, temperature around 60 degrees at shooting altitude. Not ideal conditions for extreme long-range work." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. She had made longer shots during training exercises, but never under combat conditions with a live target who might detect her presence and return fire. The psychological pressure would be intense, knowing that missing might mean the loss of a critical intelligence opportunity. "I'll need to conduct a reconnaissance of the proposed shooting position," she said. "If we're going to attempt this shot, everything has to be perfect. The margin for error at that range is essentially zero." "Agreed. You'll leave at 0300 with a small reconnaissance team. The shot window is at 1,430 hours tomorrow, so you'll have about 11 hours to get into position and prepare." That evening, Sarah methodically prepared her equipment for what could be the most challenging shot of her career. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle was broken down and inspected component by component, ensuring that every part was functioning perfectly. The scope was calibrated and zeroed using precise measurements from her previous shooting sessions. The ammunition was specially selected match-grade rounds that had been stored in climate-controlled conditions to ensure consistent performance. Each cartridge was individually inspected and weighed, with only the most perfect examples chosen for the mission. At extreme range, even tiny variations in bullet weight or powder charge could affect accuracy significantly. Sergeant First Class Mike Rodriguez, her spotter and longtime partner, assisted with the preparation while reviewing meteorological data and terrain analysis. Rodriguez was an experienced soldier who had worked with Sarah on dozens of missions, developing an almost telepathic understanding of her methods and requirements. 2,000 meters in mountain conditions, Rodriguez said, shaking his head slowly. "That's going to test everything we've learned about long-range shooting. The air density at that altitude will affect bullet trajectory, and mountain winds are notoriously unpredictable." "I know," Sarah replied, carefully packing the Barrett's components in their protective case. "But we've trained for shots like this. The fundamentals are the same regardless of range. It's just a matter of being more precise with every calculation." They departed the base before dawn in a heavily armored vehicle that carried them to within 5 kilometers of the target area. From there, they would proceed on foot through rough mountain terrain, carrying their equipment to a shooting position that offered line of sight to the target compound. The march was grueling, climbing steadily through rocky terrain that offered little cover from observation. Sarah carried the Barrett system, which weighed over 40 pounds including ammunition and ancillary equipment. Despite her small size, months of conditioning had given her the endurance necessary for extended operations in challenging environments. They reached the proposed shooting position as the sun climbed above the eastern peaks, painting the mountains in shades of gold and orange. Sarah immediately began studying the target area through her scope, measuring distances, and evaluating environmental conditions. The range to the target was exactly 2,187 meters according to her laser rangefinder, well beyond the distance at which most snipers would attempt engagement. At that range, the .50 caliber bullet would take nearly 3 seconds to reach the target, during which time wind conditions could change significantly. "Wind is variable from the southwest at 8 to 12 miles per hour, Rodriguez reported, studying the environment through his spotting scope. "I'm seeing some thermal activity starting to build as the sun heats the valley floor." Sarah made careful notes about the environmental conditions, knowing that they would continue to change throughout the day. Mountain weather was notoriously unpredictable, and the afternoon thunderstorms mentioned in the forecast could make the shot impossible if they arrived early. The shooting position itself was excellent, offering a stable platform and clear line of sight to the target. Sarah established her final firing position carefully, ensuring that the Barrett's bipod legs were firmly planted and that her body formed a stable platform behind the rifle. Hours passed as they waited for the target to appear. Sarah used the time to make practice adjustments to her scope, calculating the precise elevation and windage corrections that would be required for the shot. The mathematics were complex, accounting for bullet drop, wind drift, air density, and the Coriolis effect at extreme range. At 1,415 hours, Rodriguez spotted movement in the target compound. "I've got activity in the main building," he reported. Multiple individuals moving around inside. Sarah settled behind the Barrett, peering through the powerful scope at the distant building. The magnification made the target area appear closer, but she could still barely make out individual figures moving through the structure. "Wind is holding steady at 10 miles per hour from the southwest," Rodriguez continued his environmental report. "Range is confirmed at 2,187 meters. Temperature is 62 degrees. At 1,428 hours, the target appeared on a balcony attached to the main building, exactly as intelligence had predicted. Through her scope, Sarah could see a tall man in traditional clothing, surrounded by several bodyguards and associates. The target window would last only 90 seconds before he returned inside the building. Positive identification on the target, Rodriguez confirmed. He's in the center of the group on the balcony. Sarah made final adjustments to her scope settings, accounting for the current wind conditions and the extreme range. Her breathing became controlled and deliberate as she settled into the firing position that had become second nature after thousands of practice shots. The Barrett felt solid and familiar in her hands, its weight and balance as comfortable as an old friend. The trigger was set to break at exactly 3 pounds of pressure, providing a clean release that wouldn't disturb her aim at the critical moment. "Wind is steady," Rodriguez reported. "You're clear to engage when ready." Sarah's world narrowed to the space between the crosshairs and the distant target. Through her scope, she could see the man clearly now, recognizing the face from intelligence photographs. He was standing casually on the balcony, apparently unaware that he was being observed from over 2 kilometers away. Her finger found the trigger, applying the steady pressure she had practiced countless times. The moment seemed to stretch forever as she waited for the rifle's precise break point, timing her shot between heartbeats to achieve maximum stability. When the Barrett fired, the recoil drove Sarah backward despite her preparation. The massive muzzle blast echoed off the surrounding mountains, and a cloud of dust and debris erupted from her firing position. For a moment, her view was obscured by the effects of the shot. Rodriguez maintained observation through his spotting scope, watching the bullet's flight path across the valley. "Shot away," he reported. "Time of flight, approximately 3 seconds." Sarah quickly reacquired the target through her scope, watching as the distant figures continued their conversation, apparently unaware that death was racing toward them at over 2,500 feet per second. The impact, when it came, was devastating and immediate. Through her scope, Sarah saw the target collapse as the .50 caliber bullet found its mark with surgical precision. The bodyguards scattered in confusion, unable to understand what had happened or where the shot had originated. "Target down," Rodriguez confirmed. "Clean hit, center mass. Target is not moving." Sarah worked the Barrett's action, ejecting the spent cartridge case and chambering a fresh round in case follow-up shots were required. But surveillance of the compound showed that the mission was complete. The high-value target had been eliminated with a single, precisely placed shot. "Confirmed kill at 2,187 meters," Rodriguez reported to the command center. "Mission complete. Beginning extraction." As they packed their equipment and prepared to leave the shooting position, Sarah reflected on the shot she had just made. The distance exceeded anything she had attempted in combat conditions, requiring every skill she had developed over years of training and operational experience. The Barrett had performed flawlessly, delivering the precision necessary to place a single bullet exactly where intended despite the extreme range and challenging conditions. It was a testament to both the weapon's capabilities and the skills that Sarah had developed as its operator. Word of the record-breaking shot spread quickly through military channels. At 2,187 meters, it was one of the longest confirmed sniper kills in military history, achieved by a woman who had been told she was too small to handle the Barrett when she first attempted qualification years earlier. Major Williams met them at the extraction point, her expression showing a mixture of amazement and professional satisfaction. Outstanding work, Sergeant. That shot is going to be talked about for years to come. Thank you, ma'am. The Barrett made it possible. That rifle can do things that seem impossible until you see them happen. Don't sell yourself short, Martinez. You've proven that skill and dedication can overcome any obstacle. Your shooting today saved American lives and removed a significant threat from the battlefield. As they returned to the forward operating base, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From that first day on the training range when doubters questioned whether she could handle the Barrett's recoil, to setting a new standard for precision shooting at extreme range, she had proven that determination and skill mattered more than size or gender. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had become her signature weapon, but Sarah understood that her success came from the dedication she brought to mastering every aspect of precision marksmanship. The weapon was a tool, albeit an exceptional one, but the skill came from countless hours of practice and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Over the following weeks, Sarah received recognition from the highest levels of the military. Her record-breaking shot was documented and studied by ballistics experts who marveled at the precision required to engage a target at such extreme range under field conditions. But, perhaps more importantly, her success opened doors for other female soldiers who aspired to serve in precision marksmanship roles. The barriers that had once seemed insurmountable were being broken down by women like Sarah, who refused to accept limitations based on outdated stereotypes. Sarah was eventually selected to return to the United States as an instructor at the Army Sniper School, where she would train the next generation of precision shooters. Her expertise with the Barrett system and proven combat experience made her an invaluable addition to the cadre of instructors. Standing before her first class of students, Sarah saw the same mix of curiosity and skepticism that had greeted her years earlier. Several of the male students clearly wondered what a small woman could teach them about precision shooting and the Barrett rifle. Some of you are probably wondering what I can teach you about long-range shooting, she began, her voice carrying the confidence that came from proven combat success. My longest confirmed kill was made at 2,187 meters with a Barrett .50 caliber system, a record that still stands today. The skeptical expressions quickly changed to ones of respect and attention. Sarah had earned the right to be heard through her achievements, not her appearance or gender. The Barrett is an exceptional weapon, but it's not magic, she continued. It requires skill, training, and, most importantly, respect for the science of ballistics. Over the next 8 weeks, I'm going to teach you everything I've learned about getting the maximum performance from this system. As she began her first lesson on advanced ballistics and long-range shooting techniques, Sarah reflected on how far she had come since that first day on the range. The weapon that they said she couldn't manage had become her greatest strength, opening doors to opportunities she had never imagined possible. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle continued to evolve and improve, but Sarah's contributions to precision shooting doctrine would be her lasting legacy. She had proven that excellence knew no gender boundaries and that skill and determination could overcome any obstacle. Years later, when new students arrived at the sniper school, they would learn about the small woman from Texas who had redefined what was possible with a rifle. Sarah Martinez had become a legend in her own right, inspiring countless others to pursue their goals regardless of what the doubters might say. The Barrett .50 caliber rifle had found its perfect operator, and together they had changed the perception of what was possible in the world of precision marksmanship. Sarah's legacy would live on in every student she trained and every barrier she helped break down for future generations of soldiers. Her story had become proof that when skill met opportunity, extraordinary things were possible. The woman they said couldn't handle the Barrett had become its ultimate master, setting records and standards that would inspire precision shooters for generations to come.